Well, welcome to Kingdom Thinking. My name is Matthew Hodges, and I serve on the teaching team, Christ Our King Community Church. Kingdom Thinking is a ministry of Christ Our King in which we seek to connect Jesus' story with real-time stories. This month, we are focusing on women of the movement. Today, I have the privilege of sharing with you about Mahalia Jackson. Mahalia Jackson, this study for me has been a blessing. I didn't know much about Mahalia. I knew she was a gospel singer, but that's about all I knew about her. But I learned so much about Mahalia Jackson and look forward to learning more about her and playing her music. Well, Mahalia Jackson was born in New Orleans, and she lived in a poor community with her mother, who shared a room with her four sisters. Her father's name was Reverend Johnny. Mahalia Jackson's mother died when she was just 5 years old. Her Aunt Duke took charge of her after that. Mahalia Jackson found comfort and joy in the church as she grew up in the segregated South. Mahalia started singing when she was 4 years old, and she was influenced by the work songs of the Negro dock workers and by listening secretly to the blues records of Bessie Smith. But her main influence was the church. Now, Mahalia lived next door to a Pentecostal church. One historian said about Mahalia Jackson that she sung it like she felt it. Mahalia shared in an interview that at the age of 14, that she had a vision in which Jesus was walking across a green giant meadow. And the Lord said to her, "Open your mouth." Well, her aunt said no to the vision. And so Mahalia continued to sing in church while she went to school and doing housework. But Mahalia received some much needed encouragement when her cousins, who sang with Ma Rainey, visited and asked her to come and sing with them if she wanted to make some real money. Her cousin's affirmation of her singing ability encouraged her, but Mahalia declined the opportunity. Mahalia wanted to sing gospel music for the Lord, and she would have more opportunities to sing jazz or some other music genre other than the gospel. And this would happen all through Mahalia's life. And she would always decline the opportunity to use her voice to gain money, real money that way. Mahalia was a gospel singer. One historian said that Mahalia was a Christian singer. She was not a singer doing Christian things. When she was 15 years old, she moved to North Chicago to live with her aunt, Anna. Her goal was to reenter school and then go to nursing school. Mahalia joined Greater Salem Baptist Church in Chicago, and it became her second home a few nights out of the week. At age 16, she began to sing in many locations and settings, weddings and funerals and civic associations. Her exposure to New Orleans singing, dock worker singing, Baptist singing, and her sanctified church roots shaped the voice of Mahalia Jackson. Now, during the Great Depression, Mahalia used her voice to help churches raise money through revivals. Mahalia clung to her faith and clung to the church during tough times. You see, Mahalia did not just grow up in the church and have roots attending the church. Mahalia Jackson was a Christian. She was a believer, and she was rooted in the gospel of Jesus Christ. And Mahalia was committed to singing for Jesus Christ and singing gospel music. And for her, she would not sell her love for the Christ and for the gospel to just get a paycheck. Now, as you know, Mahalia was an African American, and she was an African American from the segregated South. Even though she was growing in popularity, she was a Black woman living in a segregated Jim Crow world. And she experienced firsthand injustice as a gospel singer. In 1955, Mahalia had a show on a local CBS station. The ratings were good, they had good following, but the sponsors and executives were concerned with white Southern watchers, their reaction with a Black person being the star. Because of the lack of sponsor and the fear of white Southerners' reaction, the show was canceled. Now, you remember 1955 is also the year that Rosa Parks stood her ground, did not move the back of the bus. Rosa Parks and a close friend shared a time when they were in Los Angeles. And because of the color of Mahalia's skin, they were not allowed to go in and have dinner. Now, this friend who was white was very upset, but Mahalia said, let's go back and we'll just order room service. And so Mahalia's popularity as a singer was growing, and she was making good money at the time. And there's one story of the fact that she would like to buy things. She had a nice house in a predominantly white neighborhood in Chicago. She also had nice things. She had a Cadillac, and she had a good friend named Lauren Garreau. Lauren Garreau was a white woman. And police would stop Mahalia in her Cadillac, and when they pulled her over, they asked, whose car was it? Mahalia would say, this is my madam's car. And the police would call Lauren, and Lauren would play along and would say, tell my maid to bring my car back. Her white friend came in handy. In an interview, Mahalia said, when I'm on stage and television and working with white people, they love me and they hug me. They say I'm wonderful. But when I'm walking down the street like a normal citizen, I can't get a sandwich. I can't get a bottle of pop. I can't get a cab. These are the same people that just showed and told me how wonderful I was. Christ our King, before Mahalia Jackson became an official woman of the movement, she experienced firsthand, even as a popular gospel singer, what it was like for a Black person to move about in an unjust world, backed by unjust laws. Well, Mahalia Jackson would step fully into the movement when she was asked by Reverend Ralph Abernathy to sing in honor of Rosa Parks, and she said yes immediately. She began to hold concerts to help raise bail money for civil rights activists. Mahalia says in an interview, she said, my joy comes when I go to the prisons and sing for those who feel they are shut off from the world. Mahalia's fame gave her a platform to speak out against injustice. Reverend Jesse Jackson, an inner circle member of Dr. Martin Luther King's leadership team, stated about Mahalia, she identified with the marching and did not choose to distance herself from it. She was in the thick of it. Mahalia's Moses, her hope of deliverance physically, was in the young Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Mahalia did concerts and sung throughout the South, raising money for the movement. And unlike her charge for her concerts, Mahalia Jackson did not charge when she sang for what she called the walking people, referring to those walking for freedom. Well, Mahalia worked closely with Dr. King, calling him, and he would call on her when he was down and needed encouragement. As you know, Dr. King was the leading voice of the nonviolent civil rights movement, and the voice that helped his voice to keep moving forward was that of Mahalia Jackson. On August 27th, 1963, Mahalia was in Washington, D.C. for the March on Washington. Mahalia was on the program and she sang 2 songs. She sang "I've Been Buked" and "I've Been Scorned." And she also sang "How I Got Over." But one of the things that is so beautiful about that day was Dr. King's "I Have a Dream" speech. That speech may have never been given the title had it not been for Mahalia Jackson. Now, the speech is over 17 minutes long. The first 12 minutes of the speech, Martin is using his notes and he glances at them as he is speaking. Even as I'm doing, I'm glancing at my notes, looking up and looking down. But then something changes. Around the 12-minute mark, Martin stops glancing at his notes. Clarence Jones, the speechwriter for Dr. King, states that King moved his notes to the side and began to speak extemporaneously. And it was because of Mahalia Jackson sitting down below on the podium had said to Martin around the 12-minute mark, "Tell them about the dream. Tell them about the dream." You see, the dream was not part of the original speech. And you and I in the world is privileged to hear the dream from the voice of Dr. King because the great gospel singer, a woman of the movement, Mahalia Jackson, said, "Tell them about the dream." May I encourage you to take some time to watch the "I Have a Dream" speech and notice when Dr. King stops looking down at his notes around the 12-minute mark. Well, Christ our King, I bring this to a close. Dr. King was the leading voice of the nonviolent civil rights movement. And the voice that helped his voice to keep moving forward was that of Mahalia Jackson. At the end of this video, there's a short clip of Mahalia Jackson, Dr. King. Dr. King is in the pulpit and he's about to preach. He's at a church in Chicago, and Mahalia sensed some anxiety or there's just something wasn't right with Dr. King, and she stands up and begins to sing a song. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho. May you watch that short video. It's about 2 minutes. And notice the smile on Dr. King's face when she begins to sing. The voice of the movement was strengthened and encouraged by the voice of a woman, Mahalia Jackson. And so as we do here in Kingdom Thinking, we seek to connect Jesus' story with real-time stories. Christ our King, may you be blessed, and may you not underestimate the impact of your voice can have in someone else's life. May you and I spur one another on to gospel living and gospel action, just as the great civil rights leader, civil rights activist, Mahalia Jackson did. Look for our next episode next week of Kingdom Thinking with Minister Rodney Alexander. Grace and peace.
I can say concerning this great gospel singer in our midst, our dear friend, my great friend Mahalia Jackson, that a voice like this comes only once in a millennium. If there is any doubt in anybody's mind concerning whether we have a movement here in Chicago, you ought to be in this church tonight.